things that always really impressed me was your ability to really relate to the audience that was there. It's such a frenetic show to do. There was so much going on, but I always really felt that you, apart from some of the other cast members, really related to the audience. Is that something that we can expect that continues over into your stand-up that we'll see at the Niagara Casino on the 24th?
Yeah, well, actually, I'd been doing stand-up comedy for a long time before I got Saturday Night Live, so I kind of had, I think, that connection with the audience as far as kind of relating to them and being more comfortable in front of a live audience, and I think that helped me a lot. So, yeah, when it comes to stand-up, I really feel a connection with my audience, and after doing it for so long, I've been doing it for over 30 years now, I just when I walk into the room, I could kind of get that sense of of the audience and what they're kind of about.
Right. And do you look, I know that a lot of stand-ups, when they get on stage, the first thing they do is they sort of have a look around the room and see, there's someone I could probably talk to sitting in the third row, and there's something happening in the back there that I could refer to. Or is the show not as interactive as that?
For me, it is. I love interacting with the audience. It's a big part of my show, actually, but it's not my whole show. But you do kind of find those pockets. You kind of find those faces and those things that you can make light of in a room.
Mm-hmm. And your original intention wasn't to act; it was to do only stand-up. Is that right?
That's right. That was my sole goal, was to become a stand-up comedian. I loved stand-up growing up in Connecticut. I used to follow all the stand-ups on TV, and I would highlight them in the TV guide when they were going to be on, and I would watch them, and I'd stay up, and ultimately I decided, it'd be a great job to be a stand-up comedian because I like telling jokes, and I felt kind of at ease with it.
Who was it that really grabbed you?
Boy, there were so many of them. Early in my childhood, I would watch some of these comedians on TV. I didn't even know their names, but as I got older, there was people like Andy Kaufman and Albert Brooks and Steve Martin that I enjoyed watching. And there's also another comic that I loved named Stanley Myron Handelman. He was this comic from New York, kind of a real Long Island kind of a guy, and he did a kind of this misdirection style of comedy, which I loved.
Right. Right. Yeah. For me, growing up, it was always George Carlin on the Ed Sullivan Show. I just never heard anyone use language like that before.
Yeah, he was different. And I think that's kind of what makes comics stand out, is when they're unique and original, especially today because there's so many comedians.
Well, is it more difficult today, not only because there are more comedians, but because invariably somebody's shooting on their cell phone, they're trying to, tape some jokes and things end up on YouTube, and it used to be, I think anyway, and you would know better than me, that years ago you had like your TV5, the 5 minutes you do on a talk show or something if you had the chance, and then stuff that you'd work out in the clubs and that. Now it seems like you might have to cycle through material a little faster just because it ends up on the net.
Well, that's a good question. I think there's a little bit of both, and the advantage of having all that social media is it gives you an opportunity to get your material out there, so you don't have to just be seen on television on a network. You can have your own YouTube channel. You can go on, Funny or Die, all those kind of things, or just YouTube in general. There's so many comics that have really had a big burst in their career because somebody videotaped them and put them on YouTube, and they went viral.
Right. I guess Dean Cook, people like that, maybe you could point to as stars of social media. He used YouTube, not YouTube. What was it? MySpace. To really get his name around.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Now, was there time that you said, what, as much as I love stand-up, it looks like acting is taking over here a little bit?
Well, there was a moment in my stand-up career in the beginning when I would be at the Improvisation in Hollywood, and I would pretty much live there because that was the stand-up club that I liked. And one of the co-owners Mark Lynn came up to me once and he said, "You ever think about doing, acting?" And I did in a way, but I was embarrassed to say so. For some reason, because I didn't have any training in it or anything. And he said, "Well, you ought to take some acting lessons because one day the casting agent will come into the back room and see you and want you to come in and read for their show." So I took acting classes, and that's sort of how I got into it.
Right. And what was the first thing? Because often, it's a commercial or it's something that we might not know about as much. What was it for you?
Well, there was a commercial I did that didn't require a lot of acting. It was for Nabisco Country Crackers with Lynn Anderson. She was a country singer, And I just had to play the banjo next to her while she fed me crackers. And that commercial was out for about a week, and I was so excited. I remember even Jay Leno coming in to tell me at the Improv, he goes, "Yeah, I saw your commercial. Real good for you. Good for you." And then a week later they found copper dust particles in the crackers, so they had to recall them all, and they took the commercial off the air.
I hope you made at least a little bit of money in that 7 days it was on the air.
I think I probably made a little bit, but not much.
That's funny. I just saw an interview with Andrew Garfield, who plays Spider-Man now, and he said his first ad was in Spain, I think, and it was a Doritos commercial where he had to play air guitar, but with a Dorito as a guitar pick, and that was his first big time in front of the camera.
That's funny. Yeah.
Now, you're back on the big screen as well. The article that we're doing is going to cover both your stand-up show in Niagara and Blended, because they're all sort of open. It's all happening on the same weekend.
Great.
So Blended, tell me a little bit about shooting in South Africa. I mean, does that place look like it does in the movie? Is it really that fantastic?
Oh, it really is. It's spectacular. We went there. We filmed in June, mostly June, and our summer, but their winter, so it was pretty brown there and cold, especially at night. So, but it was still amazing. It's just to see those animals up close and like that. It's just mind-boggling. You see the animals in the zoos here, and they're magnificent. But when you see them there in South Africa, and they're in their setting, they seem to be so much bigger and healthier.
And they're not sleeping, which they always seem to be whenever I go to the zoo.
Yeah, you're
they're
right.
Always sort of like lethargic and waiting for someone to come in and feed them. And you've worked with Adam Sandler now on a lot of movies, The Wedding Singer, and Zohan, and Just Go With It, among others. What is it about your relationship? Do you think that keeps the two of you coming back for more?
Well, I think we respect each other. We both come from a similar background, family-wise, and we're both from the East Coast, and both were into stand-up comedy. So I think there's a lot of similarities there.
Well, and there's just something that I think is so cool about the way that he works, and that he brings, he's very loyal. It seems he's very loyal, and that, that's something that is, I guess, intangible. It is intangible, but I really feel it when I see the movies, and it's sort of it brings up for me a lot of goodwill along with it.
Yeah, I think you're right. Yeah, you do see that in the films. He's really good to work with. He's fun. We know each other. Everybody knows each other's timing, and it's a good little. I don't want to say club, but we're so used to each other.
Well, he, or it seemed to me anyway, and this may not be the case at all, but in your interaction with him, particularly, there's a scene where you're leaning up against a pole, it's at the dinner, and you're talking, and you're speaking kind of almost in non sequiturs. You're speaking just sort of a word at a time, and he's playing along with you. And it kind of struck me, and correct me if I'm wrong, it felt improvised, it felt loose. Is it, or is all that stuff really written out for you?
It's a little bit of both. When we do those types of scenes, the core of it is written, but there's so much embellishment going on on the set.
Right.
You know, we have a writer usually around that's, you know, suggesting last-minute ideas, and we're all suggesting last-minute ideas, and then just improvising a little bit around it. And we do, you know, quite a few takes, too, so it is pretty loose.
Well, and when I saw the movie, the fact that you're from Vancouver got a big laugh. I mean, that might be the thing that plays well in Canada, you know, that only we laugh at.
Yeah, I think so. It's a nice place to be from.
It is a nice place to be from. Was there a reason to make him from Vancouver, or was that just something that came up?
It was just something that came up. You know, it was just the spontaneous kind of throwing it in there and having you know a definite place for him to be from.
Mm-hmm. And what sort of, when you, I guess with Adam and working with him, do you say yes before you see the script, or is it just, or because you work together so many times? How does that interaction work?
Well, usually, you know, you're on board if he's doing something.
Yeah.
There was one movie that I was part of that I wasn't quite sure in the beginning if I wanted to be part of it. It was called Grandma's Boy.
Right.
And it was just it was so lowbrow and crass, and, you know, it was just, I thought it might be a little embarrassing to be in that one. So, you know, I kind of told Sam I'll probably pass on it. And then he called me. He said, you know, Nealon, I really hope you do this, because if you don't do it as a big kid, I'll feel bad. But if you do it and it's not a big kid, no one's going to see it anyway. So I said, all right, I'll do it.
That's funny. I guess when you've had a career as long as yours has been and continues to thrive and do so well, maybe you learn a few things along the way like that. You know, those kind of truisms that maybe you wouldn't have understood when you were a young, struggling stand-up or actor.
Oh, sure, yeah, you really do.
What I mean, and I know this is kind of an odd thing, but are there any sort of bits of advice like that you might give to any actors or starting stand-ups that might be listening to this or reading this?
Well, I get a lot of stand-ups that kind of ask for advice, and I think the best advice I ever got was just to get up as much as you can on stage when you're starting out and be original. It's just write a lot and kind of observe the comics around you and see what works and what doesn't work, and what is, and try to find your voice.
Right. You know, it's funny. I dated a stand-up comic for a long time, and she would get up on stage some days and, you know, absolutely kill, and then other days not. And you never knew what was going to happen. You never could read the audience, or I certainly couldn't. But on the days when she couldn't seem to make the audience laugh, it seemed to drive her in a way that I didn't understand, because I'm not a stand-up comic. You know, I don't understand that. My reaction would have been to jump off the stage and run for the nearest exit. But I think stand-ups think differently. Do you agree? Yeah.
It's kind of it's a marathon. It's not a sprint. And when I first got into stand-up, I knew that I would be bombing here and there until I kind of got my footing.
Right.
And it really prepared me for those nights when it wasn't going as well as I had hoped it would. And I knew that was just part of it, so I wasn't that frazzled by it.